I think sort of the inspiration for, you coming onto the podcast today was sort of your thoughts on the Roman Abramovich era. And I think this is very relevant because although that has ended now and we're sort of going into the Todd Boehly era, people feel, I think, quite lost at the moment at the start of this new era, and kind of what is Chelsea? Where should Chelsea be going? Is it all gone wrong? Can Chelsea ever be the same club again? And I know you have some interesting thoughts about maybe looking back at that Roman era and looking at it maybe a little bit differently to other people.
Yeah, no, I do, because I feel like in the moment, and I have to be careful what I say here because it's a very, very successful era. I'll never ever deny that. Do you understand? Like, I'll never say that what we've been through with Roman and all the chopping and changing and sacking managers and all that, it happened, but we won a ton of trophies doing it. Facts. But there's been a lot of times where I've been excited about seasons after winning a Champions League or a Premier League or an FA Cup even, and I'm seeing the way that the squad is being formed, and we're building a nice little squad, and then all of a sudden it's just completely just collapsed. And for me, with all the things that Roman built for Chelsea, with all the success that he brought to the club, with all the great players that he brought to the club, and the great academy that he's built, that I just think we should have been so much more of a force in terms of consistency. So let's just say, for example, in the era where obviously we had Jose come in, and that was when it first started, and we won the 2 leagues on the bounce. A fantastic squad, breaking records, doing all sorts. The 15 goals conceded, Czech being, the amazing keeper that he is, and that, and we done so many great things. But then, what was the plan like after it? What did we really try and achieve long term? Did we ever become the European superpower and the league, that dominating the league in the way we really should have, in terms of the way we started? And I just don't think, every time we've got close to it, I just feel like it's just something silly that kind of just makes us abandon this whole, like, whatever we're building with a certain manager. So whether it be Jose or whether it be Conte, or whether you completely try a new thing with a AVB, for example, we've just completely just like bottled it and ran away from it as soon as something, like one thing goes wrong. And for me, I just think a club as big as us now, a club as big as we are now, with the success that we've had, the respect that we've gained from all our rivals, I just think we should have been doing so much better in terms of consistency. There is no way that you can win a Champions League and be 20 points off the league leaders. Not with the history that this club has had in terms of winning trophies. It just doesn't make sense. In no world does it make sense to almost go every single season winning a trophy, but yet in maybe half of those seasons, you've never even been a title contender. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can talk about so many seasons, like already, even recently, where we've just not been involved. You look at your second season with Conte. You look at the second season with is it the second or the third season with Jose, when we were sitting like bottom half or whatever, and Diego and Hazard, all of them were accused of downing tools and that. Like, those kind of seasons, I just think, for me, those kind of seasons, they just shouldn't happen. Like, whether it be due to the planning, the structure of the club, whatever it is, it shouldn't happen. Which is why, when I see what we're doing now with the owners, I just think, it's going to hurt. It's going to pain us a bit. We're going to suffer, like Graham Potter said, like this kind of thing that you're trying to build. And remember, Potter knows the actual project more than any fan does in terms of what their plans are. Potter knows exactly what the plan is. So he will know exactly how long it's probably going to take. So when he says that we're going to suffer, people have this kind of, I think some fans have this thing where they think he's just thinking about the results on the pitch. He's probably thinking about where these owners want to be in 4 or 5 years' time. And I think for me, that's really important when I look at what's going on around us. I look at projects that, Arsenal are doing now. The project that Newcastle are currently involved in, which hasn't even really hit the heights that we know it possibly can with all the wealth that they have and the fan base that they have, the big club that they are. You have United, who we know will always be Manchester United, always be one of the biggest clubs in the world. You have Liverpool, same thing. And you still want to mess around, chop and change managers, have this kind of structure at your club where you're never quite sure when the chaos is going to come, but you know it's coming. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just don't sit right with me, innit? And that for me is the only problem with the Roman era. I feel like we've become this kind of fan base that kind of welcomes chaos and kind of treats it like it's a good thing. Yeah, we're hated. There's always chaos at Chelsea. This is when we rise. No, I don't want it anymore. I'm done with it, Dan. I'm finished.
It's interesting, you talk about, Jose, the first era of Jose, and kind of, at times I do think about that sliding doors moment of sort of, if he doesn't have the falling out with Roman in 2007, what happens then? Do we go through, because I think what happens after that with the cycle of managers coming in and out, and the high success, the massive falls, and then back to high success again in some form. I think that all becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the way we get conditioned, because I find it fascinating that the 2 years we win the Champions League, for me, the biggest prize in football, the biggest prize in club football, that is, they came, as you said, in pretty bad and chaotic seasons. The first AVB gets sacked halfway through, or not even halfway through, it's after halfway through. February gets sacked that year, and we win the Champions League for the first time. Frank gets sacked, Tuchel comes in, within 4 months we're champions of Europe under him. Mental stuff. But I do agree with you. I think particularly in the last 5 years of Roman's era, I think we kept on going back to the well of what had worked before. And I think he felt the sort of the strategy, or the club felt, and I think a lot of fans still feel this way after he's gone, that you sack the manager, a new manager comes in, everything works, and then we'll do it again, and we'll keep on doing that over and over again. And I think maybe Chelsea and Chelsea fans haven't maybe caught on to the fact that, particularly in the Premier League, that doesn't work anymore. It worked 5 years ago. I think that's why we could go from first in 14-15, 10th in 15-16, and then back to first in 16-17. You can't do that anymore. I don't know what you think about it, because it's also just the conditioning, I think, of fans at this point, that we're so used to that. I think a lot of people, particularly Graham Potter, now think, well, why hasn't he improved the team? Usually when we change the manager, everything goes well. Like, why hasn't it been? They can't understand why. But it's been unfortunate for Potter that he's had these 3 defeats in a row, and it hasn't gone amazingly well, because his predecessor literally took us to like the moon effectively in like 4 months. So, it was always going to be, I think, a challenge for him, and it's such a big thing for I think Chelsea fans to kind of come to terms with, and also kind of for the new owners to kind of change that culture.
No, I completely agree, and this is the thing. Like, I'm not mad at Chelsea fans for being upset about this period. Like, I get it. I get it. I'm a Chelsea fan myself. I know what you want from the club. I get it. Like, you want to win trophies. You want to do the year in, year out trophy every season. We don't leave the season without a trophy, regardless whether it be a Carabao Cup or the Champions League. They don't care. They just want a trophy. Do you understand? But for me, that it's dangerous, man. It's dangerous going down this path where you're like, all you're looking at in terms of to kind of decide on whether your club's doing well or not is if you leave the season with a trophy. I don't think, like, for me, like, we got to how many finals last season? We got to the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup final, right? And we had a decent little run in the Champions League, ending it on a, you could say, kind of ending it on a high with the kind of performance in away to Madrid. But you look at, say, for example, Arsenal's season, they didn't finish top 4, but as a club, they moved so far forward, like, in terms of overall. their performance throughout the season. But Chelsea will tell you, because we finished in 2 finals and we ended like the way we did in the Champions League and all that, and we still finished top 4, that Arsenal didn't do better than us, bro. They moved so far forward compared to what we did last season. We didn't move forward. We actually regressed. Despite, and that sounds so crazy, but again, it's typical Chelsea, because you end the season being in 2 finals. You end it with a performance away at Madrid where you think to yourself, if Chelsea can do that to Madrid, they should be able to do that to anybody. But realistically, we actually regressed as a club. We bought Lukaku. It didn't work out. Midway through the season, he's not playing anymore. And we look a shadow of ourselves compared to what we looked like beginning of the season and probably even in the Champions League winning season. So it's like, it's not always about winning trophies. And like in terms of what success can look like for a team when you're kind of going through the motions and going through a project or whatever, it's not always going to look like that. But I think more importantly for me, when you have an academy like Chelsea do, and you kind of lack the structure in which we've lacked for so many years, I think it's only a matter of time before somebody comes in and says, well, this ain't right. Like, how did we have... Like, he was right to mention... Like, I know he mentioned it in the wrong way, like saying that they came from the academy and Salah and De Bruyne, but he had every right to mention them, because people just laugh at us every day because you had Kevin De Bruyne and you had Salah in your club at the same time that an Eden Hazard and a Juan Mata was here. You should not be fumbling that squad. Whether it be you get the manager wrong or you fall out with the players, whatever it is, there's a reason as to why teams like City have the structure they do, because it prevents all of those things from happening at all levels. So people will come and say, oh, but Jose was the manager, that's who he wanted to play. He wanted to play Oscar instead of Kevin De Bruyne. No problem. But then when you was building that squad, did you look at Jose and actually think that Jose was going to be perfect for these youngsters? You clearly got it wrong. You see what I'm saying? So for me, I think this whole thing that we're doing now, where people are quick to write off Potter and that, they need to understand that Potter might actually be the guy to play your Hutchinsons, to play your Lewis Halls. Do you understand? These new kids that come in, that even Carney, for example, that's just come in this summer, or last summer, sorry. He's going to get his opportunities under Potter. Can I confidently say that I believe that would happen under Tuchel? I don't think I can. And that doesn't mean he's not a good manager. But I honestly you cannot put hand on heart and say that you would have firmly believed that Tuchel would have driven a youth-driven project, like he would have led that, spearheaded that. I can't see it, because Tuchel wanted to win now, right now. And he's not a criminal for like wanting and believing in the Chelsea team to win now, because that's all Chelsea have been about. But clearly the owners also see that if we can get things right now, and maybe, we won't be winning the trophies and that, but if we can get the structure right now and we can get a pool of talent where we have the right manager to kind of bring these guys through, utilize the academy, utilize the players that we've managed to buy from abroad as well, these young talents, then we can actually be that team that dominates and actually dominates Europe and in the league. And we're never ever a team that goes from first to sixth to first again. Do you understand? So patience is the main thing, I think, for me right now.
It's interesting you say, like, particularly the Arsenal comparison last year, I think is an interesting one, because by the end of the season, when I was looking at the Premier League table and how close we were to both Spurs and Arsenal was quite depressing when you actually think about where both clubs were at the start of the season when Lukaku scored and we won quite convincingly at the Emirates, and you felt like these two clubs are not going to be anywhere near each other this season. They beat us at the Bridge later that year. They've obviously come to the bridge recently and won. They're having an incredible season so far. I think they've got the same points tally so far this season as we did in 04 and 04-05. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know, it's insane how well they're doing. And obviously they got mocked for not getting the Champions League football last year, but you see the project or the process as it's, you know, used a lot and overused probably, but it's Arteta's had to go through some very bad periods, but he's been trusted. And with the trophy thing, you know, Jurgen Klopp, his first trophy for Liverpool came in his third or fourth season, and that was the Champions League. But by the time they had reached that, they were already competing for the Premier League. You know, they'd fixed the squad. They'd started, you know, they were getting closer to winning the Premier League. And I always Joe Tweeds, who I reference a lot, and he says it, and I completely agree with him. The Premier League is your bread and butter. It's where you're judged the quality of your team. And unfortunately, I think Chelsea fans, and we've looked at these brief runs of form, these cup wins, as kind of like the way to kind of judge how great the team is, when it's been quite deceiving. Because I know that this squad, or at least the squad in recent years, can go on decent runs. I know they can have good weeks, but, you know, good years in the league is like, you know, months and months of consistent form has been difficult. And I completely agree with you. It's not so much the head coach, it's what's above him that's been the problem. It's that overarching vision that doesn't, you know, consistently change things so radically. And what is Chelsea? What are we trying to do? You know, I think that's always been my big question of why we sign players, why we appoint coaches. And I think that was absolutely lost in the last few years under Roman. But it's interesting, and hopefully, you know, we see that improvement